Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back again. My name is Ransom Nyema. If you're a returning subscriber, I believe you know me, but it's your first time of seeing my face. My name is Ransom Nyema. I've already said my name before. I'm a third year radiography medical student and based in Nigeria, you know. And apart from my studies, I'm also a freelance medical content writer and I write about medical articles, medical blog content, medical social media content, etc. And I work with healthcare and pharmaceutical companies out there, and I also work with personal clients out there. So today I have an amazing medical student, pharmacy medical student, all the way from the University of Manchester. Hey Rosie, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Rosie-May. I have an Instagram where I post about pharmacy and my little journey. I'm in my third year of pharmacy at the University of Manchester. So I'm over halfway now towards being a pharmacist. So yeah,
Four more years to go.
yeah.
It-
One more year and a bit, I think, to go. So not too long
Yeah,
now.
yeah, absolutely. So, we have 7 questions for you to answer for the public. You ready?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Okay, so I'm gonna put a disclaimer out there. So even looking downwards, I'm reading the questions to Rosie to answer for the audience. All right, so you guys will not be worried, saying, "Hey, Rancho, where were you looking downwards when you were doing the video or something?" So I've told you the reason right now. You know why I said this? I was invited for a chit chat when I spoke with some couple of medical students in the UK about arts of freelance content writing, medical content writing. They were like 37 of them, and so like it was a Zoom call, so they were at the back, backstage or something. So I was talking with the host, and I had my presentation paper like in front of me, and I was talking, looking down, talking, looking down. People, some medical students was like from the backstage was like, hey, like typed in the message on Zoom was like, hey, Ryan, so why are you always looking downwards? What are you finding downwards? I was like, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my presentation. So that's why I
Yeah.
always put the disclaimer out there that I'm always reading the questions to the guest speaker. So
Yeah.
thank you so
I think
much.
we've all been there as well. We've all been that student that's there with their presentation.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So the first question, how do you feel about the first question? You ready for it?
Yeah, it's fine by me.
All right. So the first question goes this way. What motivated you to pursue a career in pharmacy? Hmm. And how was your journey being as a third year medical student based in the UK? So tell us about that.
Yeah, so it all started kind of during my A levels. So, age 16 to 18, you sit your A levels in the UK before you go on to university. So, I chose chemistry, maths, and biology. And my favorite out of the three by far was chemistry and organic chemistry, and learning about drugs and doing all the making paracetamol experiments in chemistry. And I found that so interesting. And I kind of always thought that I wanted to go down like the healthcare field, but I was always like dabbling in like different areas. So I didn't want to know whether I wanted to go into like psychologist kind of thing or physiotherapist. But then I landed on chemistry, on pharmacy, and that was I just fell in love with the subject really. And yeah, I've just been really enjoying it. I ended up getting some experience in the area, which gave me a good insight into what I was getting myself in for. And yeah, it's been a really good journey. It's obviously been a long 3 years. I've learned a lot all the way through. I feel like because our first year in uni, it was still all COVID based, so we were barely in university. It was all online, and then to come all the way through to now. I feel like my confidence has just grown massively in my consultation skills, my clinical skills, and yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. So yeah.
Wait, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I was intrigued about what you talked about. You had an experience on the course you're studying way before you entered pharmacy, right?
Yeah, so it was just before I went to university. I had a small voluntary experience in dispensing. So I got to just 1 or 2 days. I had a little. I was shown around by a pharmacist and another dispensing staff. They kind of showed me the ropes on what to do. And then in the end of my first year of university, I worked the whole summer as a paid dispenser, medical counter assistant, and I was kind of like going between the two. So in the morning, I would speak to patients on the till, deal with like minor ailments, so your cough, your cold, any kind of thing a patient might be suffering, I dealt with. And then in the afternoons, I was dealing with making up prescriptions, ordering stock. So I feel like that really gave me a broad insight onto what I was getting myself in for, really.
That was like a stepping stone for you, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you said you love organic chemistry.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate that curse. Why?
I know. I feel like everybody I speak to on my course, they just hate it. And
Hmm,
I feel like I always feel like we do questions every week with uni, and I feel like I always want to just focus on the medicinal chemistry parts. It's just, yeah. It's just, maybe it's just me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So I'm a bit curious. What is the difference in your own narrative? What is the difference between pharmacologists and pharmacists?
I feel like in the UK you do see like pharmacologists, but I feel like it's more in something called industry pharmacy, where you deal with that. Like a lot of lab based is what pharmacologists deal with. They may work towards like handling medication, making up stocks, things like that. Whereas a pharmacist, there's so many different areas you can go into. There's a lot more doors to be opened. Some pharmacists can go into being an independent prescriber. So you can actually write prescriptions, which they've now incorporated it into the Masters of Pharmacy, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So we're the first year group to be able to prescribe as pharmacists once we graduate, and once we've finished our like extra exam after, which is really exciting, which pharmacologists can't do. And I feel like we do a lot more on like patient based, like patient centered care, things like that, speaking to patients, whereas I feel like pharmacologists deal with a lot of the behind the scenes with medications and things like that. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing and clearing the you know, especially me, I was like a bit confused because why I asked that
Mhm.
question is literally, the reason because of my country. You know, radiography and radiologists, is quietly different, right? Because the
Yeah.
radiologist is like the head of department for radiographers,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's really made me to for you to clarify the difference between pharmacology and pharmacy. I did pharmacology as a course my first year, first semester, my third year. We're in second semester right now. I did
Mm.
pharmacology and learned about the basis of drugs, how to use
Yeah.
them, abusing. You don't need any drug you take without doctor's prescription. Either you're abusing that drug.
Yeah.
And I learned about toxic drugs, and etc. That was really eye opening. I was
Yeah.
drugs I come across. I just look at it and I know what's entails, but thanks to pharmacology.
Yeah.
so, so you ready for the second question?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. So this second question, I want you to share your own narratives. Based in your country's healthcare system, right? So Could you share some insights into the role of a pharmacist within the UK, especially the UK's, healthcare system, and how is it differs from other countries? Have you been to other countries before?
I've been to some places, quite a few places in Europe, and I've spoke to like quite a lot of like locum pharmacists who have actually like worked abroad. So where I worked in that first year at the end of the summer, um, um, my manager left after like a few weeks, so I ended up working with quite a lot of locums. So locum pharmacists, if you don't know, are things like they are like temporary. So they just come in for a day and then they leave, whereas a pharmacist like is more permanent if they're not a locum. So the locums that I spoke to, you can work like in different places all over Europe mainly. So they'd say they'd go away and like learn, like work one day and then they'd go traveling like the next day with their family. But I don't know too much about the difference is abroad. Um, from what they've said, I don't know too much, but in terms of the UK, a lot of pharmacists work under the NHS, which is like a free healthcare service we have over here. But you can also work privately as well. It's just not as common. Um, and then there's different areas that pharmacists can go under. So you've got GP, which is more common, which is like your where you go to see the doctor. Now pharmacists that are being able to prescribe medication, you can actually go and see them instead of going to see your doctor for like simple things. And then there's industry pharmacy, which is like, for example, over COVID, you saw like the making of the vaccines really fast. That was all down to pharmacists and pharmacologists and things like that. You have pharmacists in hospital. I think Salford Hospital, which is in Manchester, said they had over 100 pharmacists working on site. So there's actually a lot of pharmacists that even work in hospital that deal with like speaking to patients, making sure that all their medical records are up to date. Typically, when patients are in hospital as well, they'll be taking lots and lots of different medication, and you need someone to make sure that patients are not on too many medications, because sometimes one medication can do two things. And we learn about at the moment deprescribing, which is cutting down on how many medications a person is taking. They also do things like managing all sorts to do with their records, making sure that everything that's being prescribed is okay. And then in community pharmacy, which is the most common you'll see, which is like in the UK, it's like your Boots pharmacy, your Lloyd's, anything where you walk in, you speak to your pharmacist, and you go and get your medication. And in the UK in particular, at the moment, we're seeing, even recently, there's a lot of changes with community pharmacy. So there's something called Pharmacy First, which is where you can walk in and ask your pharmacist to speak to you about things like high blood pressure. You can go and get that measured, flu vaccination services. And even in the past few weeks to the few months, there's been new antibiotic prescribing in your local pharmacist. So instead of booking an appointment and waiting to see your GP, you can actually get that done in a pharmacy if they think it's relevant. And that's all down to being able to prescribe medication. There's a big issue in the UK in particular at the moment with GP appointments after COVID. So typically here, if you want to go and see your doctor about anything minor, it can take around, on average, about 3 weeks to go and see a doctor, which is so long. Whereas you can go and walk in and see your pharmacist just round the corner up the road in like a Lloyd's or a Boots. So I feel like they're really trying to drive that at the moment to help cut down on those GP appointments that can be over really minor things. So that's really common at the moment. And yeah, I feel like it's an ever-changing community pharmacy at the moment.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Hmm.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't want to talk about Africans' healthcare system now. It's gonna take a whole lot of time. I don't want to go there. Mm, I'm not going
Oh,
there. Let's just
no.
stop there. So
Yeah.
the third question goes this way. Wait, I'm a bit curious about something. So
Okay.
there are people that are gonna come across this video and they'll be like, they're maybe still yeah, A levels, wanting to going for pharmacy. I'll ask that question, but let me just ask this one. So they'll be like,
Mm.
how is wanting to go into pharmacy, right? So tell us, how is the application process over there?
So I think it's changed a little bit since when I applied because I applied during COVID and shut down. But I've spoke to some people and they've said um, you mainly apply on as a personal statement. You apply on I think it was UCAS. I can't remember the name of it, but generally in A levels in the UK, you just apply with your normal scheme. You rank your top five, and then you'll get offered places. Typically, universities will offer an interview with pharmacy in particular, just like other medical interviews. You'll get one for pharmacy as well. It's quite simple, I'd say. I was quite shocked on how simple it was. So they mainly speak to you about your personality, your hobbies. There's no like entrance exams or anything like that typically, unless you want to go to like Cambridge or Oxford, which are like really well known universities that are quite hard to get into. But for Manchester, for example, and Aston University, which is also a really good pharmacy for pharmacy, universe, uni for pharmacy, um, you ask like a few like ethical questions on like scenarios. So one that I was asked, for example, was what would you do if a pharmacist that you were working with was intoxicated? And you've just got to kind of like think critically, think smartly, give lots of ideas. So there's not too much in the pharmacy process. But in the UK, you have to be careful with what uni you're applying to because some universities, like Manchester, for example, um, a lot of medical students will apply to all medical placements and then one pharmacy as a backup. But Manchester University is one of like two or three, I think, where if you apply with a medical statement, personal statement, you actually will be rejected from the university because they want students that are soundly want to do pharmacy alone and don't just have it as a backup option. So yeah, it's just mostly questions about yourself, hobbies. It's quite a relaxed interview. I'm not gonna lie. I was preparing for the worst and having OSCE-based scenarios, but no, it was quite good to apply.
Wow. I know University of Manchester is a bit expensive, right?
It definitely is expensive in the UK, but I think compared to other universities, I think they're all the same in the UK. I think they're all just as expensive as each other, it seems like.
How is the funding for you? How did you manage to get funding for yourself?
So in the UK, we have student finances. It's different if you're an international student, for example. So you will have to pay, I think, upfront or pay some of it upfront or have some kind of scheme, or you have to pay more. I think that's the case. But if you're a UK resident and you're born in the UK, you can have apply for a loan, a student loan. So you apply for your main loan and a maintenance loan, which helps you with your like rent, your day-to-day food, things like that. If you're staying in accommodation in uni and you're not commuting, so the amount that it cost me, which is the average across most degrees in the UK, which is max, you get a loan for it straight away. So it goes through you straight to the uni. You don't see that money at all. It's automatic through your bank. And then slowly, when you graduate and once you earn a certain amount, I think it's £28,000 at the moment is your annual income. If you are above that, and you earn above that, then you have to slowly pay so much of your earnings from that job back to that loan until I think it's like 30 years later. I could be wrong. That is just an estimate, but yeah.
Wow. That's a lot, man. That's really not a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Um,
So
wow. Wait, why is it so long to pay off those kind of bills? Why?
I think it's just because it's such a big amount. Like it adds up. I feel like because it's such a long course. It's on average like £9,250 a year, so it's quite a lot of money. And I think they want you to just be able to slowly pay it back as much as you can. So I think it's quite nice because it balances out how much we're paying back, and it's only a small amount that's like being slowly paid back over time. Well, it's not small, but
I
it's not like
understand.
paying it all up front, you know.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So that draws me back to the third question. So, how do you feel about the third question?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
It's a bit of a tough one, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah. Okay. So, as a student, in the healthcare field, what are some of the most pressing challenges or issues that you believe that pharmacists will face in the nearest future in your own narratives? So tell us, what do you think?
Oh, I've got two that I can think of. So the first one is a pressing issue all over the world, which is antibiotic resistance. I think that's the main one we're taught in university that is so important everywhere. And we actually all in our university that take pharmacy, you have to become an antibiotic guardian, where whoever you're speaking to anywhere, you always have to be making sure that they're taking their medication as told, because at the end of the day, bacteria are slowly becoming more and more resistant to these antibiotics we've got available. We're discovering antibiotics less and less as well. So, slowly over time, we potentially could get to the point, and probably will get to the point, where we're not going to have many antibiotics that are going to be able to treat the simplest of diseases that we see now. So, it's quite scary, but pharmacists are slowly trying to do more and more to help prevent this. So we all have to be guardians. We all have to be making sure that our patients are taking their medication as they are directed, taking the full course, making sure that they're taking not like their child's antibiotics that they took a while ago for something else, making sure that they're taking exactly what they're given. So that's the first one. And I feel like that slowly over time is going to be more and more important and is going to be spoken about. And the second one is the intensity in particular community pharmacies. So, like I said earlier, GP appointments in the UK are so hard to get hold of. 3 weeks you've got to wait for one, other than unless they're emergency, of course. But if you want to go and see your GP about an issue, unless it's really important, you can't get an appointment anymore. So people are relying more and more on pharmacists being able to walk in, speak to them about minor things and getting them to recommend them things, getting them to look in their ears if they've got issues with their ears, checking their eyes, things like that. And slowly over time, we're being pressured more and more with quite a lot of things. Obviously, this new pharmacy first thing that's come out, where pharmacists can talk to patients about a range of things from like UTIs, throat infections, eye infections. It means a lot of patients are coming to pharmacists for advice, which is amazing because it puts the stress off of your doctors and GPs, but it's also putting a lot of strain on community pharmacists. And when you're working in such a busy community pharmacist that's already on thousands of prescriptions a month that they've got to do blister packs of big medications, as well as these services. If you've not got the staff to help and the pharmacist there to help with doing all of those things, you're not going to have time to speak to patients with the pharmacy firsts, and it's so hard. And we have like a 111 service as well, where um, if you've got like a minor issue in the UK, you can phone up 111, and they can help you with like minor issues. So a lot of the time you can get a prescription on there if you've got like an infection, and that'll all be referred to a pharmacist. So they might point you out to a certain clinic to go to, or if not, they'll tell you to go and speak to your pharmacist, or they'll refer you to one. So a lot of the time now that's being seen more and more of. But I feel like the issue is, even though it's taking away from the amount of GP appointments and they're being seen less and less, you are also seeing community pharmacists getting more and more pressure. And I think that needs to be managed to a certain point, because if it's they're having too much pressure, then the job isn't going to be as appealing. That's the only thing. But yeah, that's two of the really big issues.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Whoa, you've been an amazing guest speaker, Rosie. Um,
thank you.
Share your own narratives, because you're a pharmacy student, so you definitely have something to say. You definitely have something to say.
Yeah,
Yeah, I really adore, what you've been sharing about those questions. Placing and
yeah.
dropping your own narratives. These are amazing narratives, and I believe that the audience would greatly appreciate it.
Oh, I'm glad.
So we have like four more questions to go. Mm.
Yeah, sounds good.
So the first question goes this way: how do you feel about the first question?
I'm all ready for it.
You sure? You're always
Yeah,
ready.
yeah. They're doing well. They're good questions, in fairness. I'm really impressed. They're really, really good thought out questions.
Yeah, because I'm a great researcher, and looking at
Yeah,
your journey for while we've been connected, and I had to just, you know, create some with the help of my researching skill. I just, picked out some questions related to your niche because I don't want to deviate from your niche as well. You know,
yeah.
so
You can really see that.
yeah, I don't want to like you're studying pharmacy, I'm asking about things about radiography, asking things
Yeah.
about. I don't do that. It's crazy.
No, you can really see that you put so much effort into all the different interviews you do. It's really impressive. No, you do your research. The questions are always spot on. Yeah, really impressed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So how do you envision the future of pharmacy, right? Pharmacy practice evolving, particularly in light of technological advancement and challenging healthcare policies. I'll tell you a story before you answer that question. Um, Still working on this content with a guest speaker I'm trying to like invite because I saw her post about you know how her elder brother who works in a hospital in the US all of a sudden lost his job because of AI and
Yeah,
some robots working in the hospital and he lost his job. So I'm asking, I was like,
that's
so
yeah,
is AI trying to like take over humanity in general? But the answer is no because of what I'll tell you, sorry. So I'm a medical student, so I'm kind of like inclined in things related to medical concepts. So I'm very good in researching and publications. And I've done a whole lot of publications in my life. Since it was my first year, I started writing professionally and earning from it. So I was curious about. I asked her because I'm still working on that project with her, but I asked her, "Do you think that your brother was overthrown by AI or the latest technologists in the healthcare?" She was like, "No, you know, but it's not all the healthcare professionals in the hospital was thrown away, was sacked or something. Some of them were still got their jobs gone." So I'm saying is, even though AI is there, it's a very powerful tools, robots and everything. These are very powerful tools. They're there
yeah,
just to help humanity, not to overthrow humanity. So she was like, she's a medical student in the UK, but her brother is eldest brother is in the United States. I think he's working. What kind of? I think is what kind of I think is chiropractic. He's a chiropractic
yeah.
something.
Chiropractor. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I can't remember. That was last year. So she was like, never ever. AI is not going to take over especially the healthcare system. Patients don't really, they really care about the connections between you, the healthcare professional, and the patient. So the
Yeah.
robots or the AI, whatever, they don't have that connection with humanity. They're just there. You do this, do that fast. No connection. So I think connection is a gap, like bridging the gap between AI and you know what's it called, and human beings in general. So I want you to tell
Yeah.
me, do you think that alongside with the question I asked you, put it, as the second or something. So, do you think pharmacy would be overthrown by AI? So tell us.
Oh, well, no, honestly, everything you said, I completely agree with. No, and it's awful that people are losing their jobs over this. Like, I'm so sorry for your friend that lost his job. Like, it's awful. And you're completely right about like the connection between humans and healthcare professionals. We're always taught that sometimes patients just feel like they need someone to understand how they're feeling, and that's having that one-on-one connection is so important, and being able to tailor a patient's full environment to them and their medication is so important. We always say to, especially when you're in GP pharmacy, don't look at the condition. Take a step back and look at the patient as a whole. What's going on with their other conditions? What other medication are they taking? Could they be taking a medication that will treat two things rather than just one? And it's looking at their family history, social history, and putting it all together to speak to a patient. I think that's so true. In terms of AI and for the pharmacist role, I've already seen in person in Salford Hospital, they had a robot which would dispense medication for you. So it was quite impressive, but it would literally go up onto a wall, pick up the right medication of the right strength, drop it in front of you, and all you needed to do was put a sticker on. And even though that might take up dispensing jobs and things like that, I don't think it will ever take over a pharmacist role, because I feel like with AI it's still so new. We still so little about it, and everybody is honestly quite scared of it, and I think that's completely normal. It's the unknown, and it's been around for so little that we're still not educated enough to know enough about it. And in that case, we can't put all our reliability onto these AI robots and things like that. It's like doctors make millions of mistakes every year with prescriptions, and pharmacists are the one to make sure that everything is okay to go to the patient, everything is suitable. And I don't think we would be ready, at least for not a long time, to just take that away from just and give that straight to robots. I don't think, or AI or any kind of experience. I can't see it happening, and it's extremely scary. And I think that's how a lot of people are looking at it. And yeah, but I think it's definitely something that's going to come about in the next so many years. I think it's definitely going to be a big step. We're going to see a lot more of AI around,
Yeah,
but I think pharmacists are definitely going to stay where they are, and I think they're needed as that like last little bit of backup just in case everything goes wrong. No
absolutely.
human's perfect. No human's perfect. We can't expect like a robot to be fully perfect all the time, and I think we can't risk a minor error for so many patients, because even though doctors make millions of mistakes every year, even if a fraction of those mistakes are fatal to that patient and can cause harm or death, that's still so many patients, like thousands of patients that are still going to be potentially dying because of some small error. And that's what pharmacists are there for, and that's what people don't always see. So yeah, I think pharmacists are definitely here to stay in that
I do.
sense.
I do agree. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So
So
the fifth question is kind of like scary a little bit.
yeah. A
How do you
little
feel
bit.
about how do you feel about that question? Because I kind of like
Yeah,
deviate a little bit.
I feel like it's a good question, and I feel like it's relevant to what I've actually been doing at uni this week.
Mm,
So
mm.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That was last week, right? You did your clinical rotations, right?
I went on a community pharmacy placement last week, so I worked 5 days in a community pharmacy. So I was able to work alongside pharmacists, dispensers, and I got to meet an accuracy checking technician, um, and other students as well that were working there. So yeah, I've definitely experienced this recently.
And I knew you networked. You did some networking processes over there, right?
Yeah, I did.
So the fifth question goes this way: can you discuss the importance of interprofessional collaboration between pharmacists and other healthcare providers, and how it contributes to better patient care? So tell us in your own narratives.
Yeah. To start with, I'll talk about like just in the pharmacy, and then like in a hospital setting, because I feel like there's two aspects to that question. So in a community pharmacy, for example, you have dispensing staff who put all the medication together, label it, and then the pharmacist typically checks, and that allows for, like I said, all those errors that a doctor makes. It almost gets two sets of eyes to look at it and to double check everything, rather than just the pharmacist does it all, and dispenses it, gets it ready, like prevents you, because a lot of the time in a pharmacy, how it's set out is all the drugs are in A to Z, and sometimes if you've got two drugs that are really sounding alike, if a dispenser does it and then a pharmacist checks it, it prevents those tiny little errors happening. So communication with each other, making sure each other's aware of the mistakes that's happening, is also really important in a community pharmacy. And then in terms of a hospital pharmacy, a pharmacist can speak to a range of different healthcare professionals. And this week on Monday, we worked with audiology students, to look at a few case studies. And it was all about this patient, was deaf and was getting fitted for a hearing aid. They weren't still comfortable with the hearing aid, they were just getting used to it. So it was all about like being able to speak to the patient, like showing them your mouth to make sure they can lip read you clearly, um, and it helping minimize errors in that aspect. So we've actually like been practicing working alongside. It also, the case we did on Monday, it focused on how minor errors, being able to communicate different things to each healthcare professional. So the patient we had on Monday that we spoke about, they came in with an infection in their ear, and they were prescribed amoxicillin by a doctor. However, the patient had told the pharmacist when they came into hospital that they were allergic to amoxicillin. And somehow the pharmacist became really busy that they weren't able to put it in their medical notes. And so that led to nobody else being aware that this patient had a serious allergy to amoxicillin in their. So when the doctor came over to prescribe them something for their ear, no one knew about the allergy, and so amoxicillin was given. And the patient was deaf, so the patient actually couldn't then understand what the name of the drug was, so they weren't aware of what they were being given. And so all that communication between the different staff members and that scenario really puts into perspective the importance of making sure when you're finished with a patient, you are informing and updating their medical records of everything that another healthcare professional may need to when speaking to patients or making decisions. And we've done this as well with optometry students last semester. So we were looking at the eye and conjunctivitis, and there was things that optometry students were going to know about the eye that we were going to have no clue about, and vice versa. So it was about coming together, working together to tailor a patient's health to themselves, like tailoring the right medication to give them to their condition, and being able to communicate effectively with other staff. And that is so important.
Wow. Mm, 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 mm. Have you collaborated with radiologists and medical students over there?
We haven't know yet, but honestly, I would be so intrigued because I feel like that'd be so interesting.
Yeah.
Looking at different I feel like that I really enjoy those workshops, and because it takes you out of just your community pharmacy world, it really opens your eyes to what other healthcare professionals are doing. And I think in order in the future to be able to know who to speak to about different issues, you need to know what each healthcare professional does. So yeah, I'd love to do that.
How about medicine students? Do you collaborate with them for?
Oh, I don't think we have, but I have a medical student friend. One of my best friends is a medical student, so we always compare different things and speak about things. So anything that she doesn't understand about pharmacology, I can give her an eye for. And she in the past has always supported me with everything I've done. So yeah.
Amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that for us. I do agree in
Yeah.
everything you said, and I believe that the audience will greatly learn something from what you just said.
Yeah, I hope so.
So the first question is, wait, hey, I'm very curious about something right now.
Yeah.
So do you think that collaboration with other healthcare system will be amazing in the future?
Oh, I think so. I think it's so needed. I
In
think
what way? In what way? Tell me. In what way?
Oh, you mean just like generally collaborating more with other healthcare
Yeah.
professionals in the future? Yeah, I think, well, when you go into like hospitals, a lot of the time they can do like ward rounds, especially medical students. And those ward rounds, especially on like, I've been on like critical unit wards where you've got patients that are either like septic, things like that. And are really vulnerable, and you have a whole team come and meet with all sorts of different professionals. um, you might have like the sepsis team there, you might have like the anticoagulant team, the smoking cessation team there as well to help. And I think it really gets you familiar with like what's going to happen in those scenarios, being able to inform each other, help each other, make the most patient-centered approach possible. I think it's all about coming together to get the best outcome for your patient, and I think that's essential for talking to other healthcare professionals.
I do agree. Thank you so much for that. So that draws me back to the sixth question, and I want you to tell me what advice would you give to aspiring pharmacy students? Because I know definitely they're going to be an aspiring student going to watch
Yeah.
this video. So tell me, what advice would you give to aspiring pharmacists or aspiring pharmacy students based on your own experiences and observation within the field?
Yeah, so I would say the best piece of advice that I feel like you're always given at uni here for pharmacy is get experience, whether it's voluntary, a job. I couldn't get a job to begin with, so I tried out with voluntary experiences. I got a few days, and then like that, I was snapped up in a job for dispensing as soon as I'd got the experience. Because a lot of the time, dispensing, all pharmacies in the UK need dispensing staff, so I think that's really important. And when you're dispensing, and in particular, you become a lot more familiar with drug names and I think like that, like because it's all A to Z and you're dispensing a lot of the time the same medication over and over again, it really helps put like your uni work into perspective on what you're actually doing. A lot of the time in uni, you'll hear these names like apixaban, amitriptyline, aspirin, and you'll be like trying to remember it, and it's so confusing. But then when you actually come to seeing it in real life in a pharmacy and you're picking out the same names over and over again, you can be like, oh, I know that's for high blood pressure, that's for heart disease, that's for like da da da, such on. Like, I feel like that's so it's so important to be able to see it in real life. And something I more so learned a lot about was all the different types of insulin, because insulin in the UK, there's a lot of different brand names that you need to become familiar with. Also inhalers as well, they're all like quite the same. So you need to become familiar with what the brand names are. Like, is it, for example, like Humulog Mix 25 or 50? They both look exactly the same, but they're different, and making sure that you're doing the right one. And also, I feel like with inhalers, you learn a lot about asthma, inhalers, COPD in uni, but being able to actually see them and the different areas and the different types in real life, which you might actually not be able to see in uni, is really helps with revision and really just puts it into perspective on what you're actually learning about. And then even if you're working behind the till, you might have a patient come up to you being like, I've got a really bad headache. I've got a really upset stomach. What would you suggest? You might not know straight away. You might slowly have to keep asking the pharmacist. That's what I was doing last week, until I got used to it. But being able to get familiar with the advice, the common questions to ask with certain medication, like cocodamol, for example, you have to ask what medication are they taking, make sure it's only 3 days use, like things like that. Certain medications you can't have with asthma. And becoming familiar with those simple questions will really help you at university. And honestly, it really, really helped me as soon as I worked in pharmacy. And then I'd just say, keep going and keep pushing, and apply everything you learn, because sometimes you're overloaded with all this information and it's so confusing, but then when you actually put it into perspective and you're seeing it in real life day to day, it really, really helps. It really makes it become familiar, and it also makes it become more real. Like, all the work you're doing, all the hard work that you're putting towards it, all the research you're doing it to help the people that you're going to face in the future. And that's the main outcome. And you're all doing it for the purpose of trying to be best for the people that you're going to be speaking to. So, yeah, that would be the advice I'd give.
That was perfect. That was perfect. Oh, that was a nice nugget you dropped right there, and I believe that aspiring pharmacy students will greatly adore you for that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we have the last question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the last question? You've peeped through the answer, right?
Yeah. I really think this is such an important question. And this is the big question that is so important. This is such a good, like, I'm so passionate about this question as well. So it's a really important question.
All right. So tell me your narratives. You know, what are some common misconceptions about pharmacy and pharmaceutical studies that would like to, that you would like to address for the audience? Tell me, and tell the audience as well.
Yeah. So a lot of you out there might just be thinking, oh, all a pharmacist does is they print off a label, they stick it on a box, and that's it. Like, why do we have to wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes for a medication when I could go and pick it up myself off the shelf? And a lot of the time, you don't see a lot of the behind the scenes on why it takes so long. And it can be so frustrating. And before I worked in a pharmacy, I would have probably said the exact same thing. I'd be like, why am I waiting for one box of medication I can go and get myself? There is so much done behind the scenes. The pharmacists do delivery services, they do minor ailments, they speak to people on the phones with their own issues, they have clinics, things like that. They have to do big, like, pill boxes. I don't know whether you've seen, either with relatives, lots of like little medications in these like Monday to Friday boxes, AM to PM. They do all of that. And every time they check your medication and they dispense your medication, so much more is done other than sticking a label on a box. We have access to your medical records, what you've been taking before, ever since you were born, really, we can always have access to. Um, and like I said earlier, doctors make millions of mistakes every single year. And even if a fraction of those are serious, that's still thousands of patients that could be having really bad side effects, fatal, or you can even die of it. I've seen patients, like, cases this week where slight changes to I think the patient was taking prednisolone 5 milligrams, 5 lots in one go versus propanolol. This was a CPOD patient taking it. That slight change can be fatal to a patient and has actually caused death in a lot of patients. So the pharmacist comes involved where a dispenser will, which is another member of staff, will get that medication ready, will put the label ready. They will also look at your medical records. And then the pharmacist will go undergo a lot of legal checks with your medication and the prescription you've been given. So they don't even have to check your medication, they also have to check the prescription they've been given. There is legal requirements that they have to meet. Is it in date? Has it got all the information it needs on it? Is the prescriber's signature safe? Does it look like it's been frauded? Like, there's a lot of things that goes into it. And the thing that I always say to my friends is you go and get a takeaway and you wait half an hour to go and get your takeaway. And that brings you a little bit of joy in the evening. And you have to wait half an hour for it and you're not going to moan about it. Your food's getting ready, you know, you're getting ready for a takeaway. Whereas you go and wait in a pharmacy for your life changing medication. For example, if you're a diabetic patient who needs insulin and that medication saves your life and is essential for you to stay alive day to day, that isn't just like a small treat at the end of the week. And I feel like some patients can sometimes get so like annoyed, but they don't see behind the scenes on what happens. And I feel like all pharmacists want to like tell everyone just like please just like give us time. We do a lot, and yeah, I'd always just say the main thing I want to say is just appreciate your pharmacists. They could be making life changing alterations to your medication. They could be preventing you from having even the smallest of side effects, honestly. If a prescriber has made an error and missed an interaction with something you might be already taking, that could cause you prevent you having any other issues and prevent you making you really ill. So actually a pharmacist is doing quite a lot and they have to check a lot of errors every single year. So yeah, I just want to say that out. Yeah.
Wow, you just broke down the misconceptions about what people think about pharmacy and pharmaceutical techniques, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that with us. So we've
Yeah.
come to the end of the session. You've been an amazing guest speaker, Rosie-May. Thank you so much
Oh.
for opening. And what are your last words for the audience before we wrap up the session?
No, just thank you so much for having me as well. It's been really insightful talking to another medical student. Um, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So, if you love this content, do well to subscribe, share, and you know, and comment.
Yeah,
Also, share to your network as well. It will greatly help someone out there. Thank you
yeah,
so
I hope
much.
so.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you. Bye.